You're late.
A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins.
It's wonderful to see you, Gandalf.
Far too eager and curious for a hobbit. Most unnatural.
Before you came along, we Bagginses were very well thought of.
Indeed.
Never had any adventures or did anything unexpected. Whatever you did, you've been officially labeled a disturber of the peace. Gandalf, I'm glad you're back.
So am I, dear boy. So am
That's the Cliff Notes version of the prologue, and I know it was interspersed and cut in various and annoying ways, and you wanted to see more of it, because honestly, I feel like this might be the best part of Lord of the Rings, is the entire time that we spend in Hobbiton in the Shire. And but what Peter Jackson has done here with the Fellowship of the Ring is, let's get this straight, with the theatrical edition of the Fellowship of the Ring. This is not the film edition. This is not, or sorry, it's the film. The extended edition. I don't know where I lost that word. This is what we first saw in December 2001 when it was released into theaters. And so the very first thing we see about hobbits, other than the little bit about Gollum kind of being hobbity, is Frodo reading, right? So this clip right here, it says the Fellowship of the Ring, and then we see Frodo reading, and then Gandalf comes in, and we get this whole bit about Gandalf, and Frodo asks him what news of the outside world, which is, instead of Bilbo's prologue, they removed that from the extended edition, and they put in Bilbo's whole prologue in the extended edition. And this one, Frodo says what news of the outside world to Gandalf, and Gandalf tells him a little bit about what's going on. Oh, what? And it's there to establish that the hobbits are hidden. Nobody really knows much about them. And there's a little bit more about Hobbiton right there. They travel through a little more of Hobbiton in the with Gandalf and Frodo discussing and travel through a little bit more of Hobbiton right there. And where the extended edition has a little bit more about Bilbo's queerness and Bilbo looking for the ring in his pocket. That whole scene it isn't in the prologue to the theatrical edition. So
the way I look at this is basically that Jackson had to, in his mind, shorten everything to give a brief introduction to the viewers of the world of the Shire and hobbits, and especially in the scenes that you put Frodo's relationship with Gandalf. So he wants to condense all that into a minute or so of scene, minute and a half maybe, and that's what he does, and it's different from the book.
It is, because in the book we get some exposition about Bilbo, and we're told that Frodo was adopted by Bilbo when he was 99, and so there's this introduction to who Frodo
when Bilbo was 99, not Frodo.
When Bilbo was 99, not Frodo. Yeah,
right.
Sorry. And then we learn more about the queerness of the Bagginses, and that whole business with the dragon, and that you have the Gaffer, Sam's dad, and Ted Sandyman discussing about the weirdness of the Bagginses and how Frodo's parents died in a drowning accident,
right.
But it all establishes more of the oddness of Frodo and Bilbo, mostly Bilbo, but of both of them. Whereas in the film, what he establishes is the relationship between Frodo and Gandalf, because in the books, Frodo doesn't meet Gandalf, or we don't. They know who each other. They know about the other. They know who they are, right? They've met before, but they don't meet in the books until after Bilbo disappears at the party, and Bilbo has actually left Hobbiton already. That's the point at which they first meet. And so there's a big difference.
Right. In other words, there's no long established friendship in the book between Gandalf and Frodo.
In the book, right? Yes, there's no. Yeah, it's not like they are. It's almost like Gandalf and Frodo are now the primary relationship, because they establish that first. Whereas Bilbo and Gandalf, right? It's an old relationship, but Frodo and Gandalf have a keen appreciation of each other. Gandalf asks Frodo things, Frodo asks Gandalf things, and there's a familiarity to them that there isn't in the books at all.
Right.
And is that any good? So let's talk about that, guys. Let's look at this first question then. Is it lore friendly? Is it lore friendly to have Frodo and Gandalf as the first relationship, as the most important relationship, as the established relationship that we get introduced? I mean, when you're talking about this is our time now, or this is the time that the movies takes place, the very first thing you see is Frodo. You don't see Bilbo. You don't get any information about what's going on. Okay, theatrical edition again, not the cinematic edition.
Right.
And so does that even, like in my mind, does that even change maybe the relationship that Frodo and Gandalf had and how we perceive it in the films rather than the books?
Well, so lore friendly. The books themselves, in the books, Frodo is of the hobbits, he's the main character, um, the primary hobbit around which he made a. You can make an argument Sam's the hero, but um, there's an argument to be made that Frodo is as well. I think we've talked about this before. There's actually 4 different arguments for 4 different characters being the hero of the story, and so there's a the idea that visually theatrically we're going to center on Frodo's relationship with Gandalf, which he does have a close relationship with him, especially as the story goes on. The fact that we're going to focus on that, I don't see that as lore unfriendly. I do think that's lore friendly, and the focus on Frodo, instead of starting with Bilbo, starting with Frodo. It's not like Frodo, doesn't read books, and Frodo doesn't know about Gandalf, and doesn't, wouldn't, that whole conversation that he has on him with the cart, the friendship is probably being emphasized there. That part of it, maybe not lore friendly, but in the balance, that whole scene establishing Frodo's and Gandalf's primary relationship, I think that is lore friendly, not lore unfriendly in balance. There are aspects of it which are not technically, but I think it does hold to the themes in the book.
I agree. I think I have no problem with this at all. And this goes back to my point, is that I feel like what Jackson really got right a lot was everything in the Shire. And this goes to the Hobbit movies too. The relationship that Gandalf has with the hobbits, right? Even the line of the fireworks, and in the book, Tolkien wrote, let me find it. Hence the excitement of the Hobbit children. G for grand, they shouted, and the old man smiled when they saw that logo, because they were excited about the fireworks, right? They talked about seeing the logo G for grand. And so Tolkien, Jackson put that into the prologue with those fireworks coming out of the back of the wagon. And so that's like one of those things where that's in the spirit of what Tolkien wrote. That's lore friendly, because that establishes that they loved Gandalf, and Gandalf kind of loved them too. And so having Frodo there first, I think it establishes it well. I have no problem with it at all. I think
Now, and like I said, technically, like there are elements like, was Gandalf known as a disturber of the peace? That joke that Frodo makes, no indication in the books that's the case.
True.
But it's within the spirit of the lore. The hobbits, especially the prim and proper hobbits, definitely looked down on Gandalf and Bilbo, because Bilbo was an odd bird and kept to himself and had adventures and things like that. So you could easily see it. So answer, yes, it is lore.
Yeah, I've just looked up the line about Gandalf. When the first thing that's said about Gandalf that Tolkien wrote in the first chapter is, his real business, Gandalf's real business, was far more difficult and dangerous than the skill with fire, smokes, and lights that he talks about there. But the Shire folk knew nothing about it. To them, he was just one of the attractions at the party. Hence the excitement of the Hobbit children. G for grand, they shouted, and the old man smiled. They knew him by sight, though he only appeared in Hobbiton occasionally and never stopped long. But neither they nor any but the oldest of their elders had seen one of his fireworks display, and they now belong to legendary past. So yeah, he wasn't a disturber of the peace, but I think that lends itself to the whole, there are queer things going on about Bilbo and Frodo, and having him be the relationship established with Bilbo and Frodo, that kind of brings that idea of the queer disturbances.
You meant Gandalf and Frodo, right?
No. Well, I mean, he has a relationship with Bilbo and Frodo, and not
Gandalf's
necessarily
relationship with Bilbo and with Frodo.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Right, is kind of odd. So,
Agreed. All right.
So is it lore friendly? Yes. Does the change make for better cinema? Yeah, I think so. Even though I feel like if you were going to do this in a long form, it might work better to take a little bit more time establishing some of those characters. But you're if you're going to do like a 10-hour Fellowship of the Ring TV series, I think you have to throw Frodo or Bilbo and Gandalf in the mix right off the bat. Now,
right.
Maybe the question then is, which is better? Is the theatrical edition better then as an intro than Bilbo's prologue in the extended edition?
It's better cinematically. Yeah. The extended edition, so many elements of the extended edition are attempting to just bring more of the book into the movies. But it's a tighter...
You say that as if it's a bad thing.
Oh no, I like them better. I like the extended edition better, but that's
Yeah,
because
yeah.
my first love is for the books.
Right.
As cinema, it's tighter and it's better to do it this way. Not everything, like when Tolkien's writing his story, he's not writing for cinema. So there's going to be a lot of things that you can make changes respectfully that make it better cinema, as long as you stay true to the spirit.
Yeah, I agree. And this is definitely one of those cases. All right, last question. How much do you like the change?
Yeah, go for it.
I like the change cinematically. This might be my favorite change, and
Oh, wow.
I feel like you get a really good idea of who the hobbits are through just by showing us and not like giving us the long prologue from Bilbo. Like the you see them still, they're still walking through the fields of the Shire, or walking, they're still on the cart through the fields of the Shire. You still get an idea that Gandalf, there's a weirdness to him that people don't really trust about him, and so you get the queerness. I think he did incredibly well without bogging us down with details. And if you can say bogging us down with details, it happens in the extended edition, sure, but we love those details. But I think as a cinematic, I feel like this change worked incredibly well. I loved the movie when it started it, and that's why it disappointed me so much by the end of it when all the characters ended up changing. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to give this one a 5. Bam.
Wow. 5.0.
I can't do 5.1, so I'll give it a 0.0. 5.0.
Yeah, I don't have anything bad to say about this change. I don't.
Yes.
It's simply a change, as we discussed already, well within the spirit of the work, and it made better cinema. There's no reason not to give it a 5. I agree with you.
Wow. Okay, we're done. We got to stop. Like we're shills now for Peter Jackson. We've said that this change was perfect.
Yeah, it's my favorite aspect of modern culture is the idea that if you don't hate everything all the time, you're a shill.
Oh, right. I know. Yeah. Oh man, is this the first time that I've given things I've given things higher ratings than you? But yeah, all right, guys. We like the change. We thought it was lore friendly, and we thought it made for better cinema. Fight us if you disagree, because we're right and
Please do.
You're wrong.